everybody. We are still talking PR. I'm Nikki Woods, and one of the things that I love to do is help people walk in their greatness. But what good is walking in your greatness if nobody knows you're doing it, right? So we've been talking about ways to get more media and more visibility for your business. And today I wanted to kind of share some tips on how you can connect with journalists, because that's the big thing, obviously. You can write the press release, you can have the great story, but if you can't get it into the hands of anybody, then what's the use, right? So I have 7 tips. They're really quick, they're really easy, and they can be fun. You can have fun with this. So the first thing is that you want to rub their back. You know, they say you rub their back, they'll rub your back, and it's kind of true with journalists too. One way to get a journalist to notice you, especially with this world being so small as social media has made it, is you can become engaged with them on social media. So you can tweet their stories, you can comment on their blogs, you can do all of these fun things to kind of get their eyes on you, so that when you do eventually pitch, they kind of recognize you're like, oh, I know that Nikki chick. She's been retweeting my stuff. People really love support, and this goes back to one of my favorite tips in business, is that you definitely want to give first, right? So you give first, and this is the way with journalists, and they'll kind of connect. They'll kind of say, oh, I know who she is, and they'll be a little bit more open to your pitch. So you want to try to build these relationships by being engaged with journalists on social media. The second tip is that you want to also build relationships offline. So in one of my previous broadcasts, I talked a little bit about how it's much easier to become famous at home than it is to like become this international superstar right away. So, and that's the same. That's true with journalists. I mean, they're local, they're in the community, they're doing things, and it's easy for you to kind of reach out to them and meet them where they are and start to build those relationships. Because with anything in life, you really want to establish the relationship before you actually need it. So the first 2 tips are establishing those relationships, 1 online with social media and other means, and 2 to actually go offline and meet them at a charity event, or if they're doing a 5K, or if they're having a networking, thing. Go out and introduce yourself and meet them. The third thing is to make sure that as you're building your business, or you're selling your book, or promoting your book, or you're building your brand, you want to make sure that you're gathering stories. So some people call them testimonials, but for the purpose of this, we're going to call them stories. So if they're, if you've changed their life, if you're a love, yes, you do need information for Bear. Let's go, Ebony Combs. You got this. So if you are a love expert and you are helping with, relationships, or helping people find love, or getting married, make sure that you're sharing these stories, so that when you're talking to the press, you can say, well, I'm the reason that there are 20 children now, because I was able to put, 10 couples together and they now have children, or whatever the story is. Or if you're a financial expert and you've been able to help, people get out of debt, and the amount of debt is $1 million that you've been able to eliminate. Make sure that people know that those are your stories. And you want to be able to share those stories as you're promoting your business, your brand, your book, whatever it is, your product, your service. People love stories. They make you relatable. They make you real. They make you human. But just as much as we love stories, journalists love facts. So as you're collecting these stories, make sure that you're collecting the information that goes along to support it, so that when we start to really dig into the story, as journalists, we feel comfortable throwing out those stories, throwing out those phenomenal stories that we all have to share about what it is we're doing. We want to make sure that we have those facts in line that support those stories. So you want to make sure that you're doing that too. That's number 4. Use the data to tell that story. Number 5 is to get behind a cause, right? So we all do these things, and obviously we want to make money. Obviously we want to be profitable. But a lot of times journalists need those feel-good stories. There's so much negativity. There's so much chaos that's going on that sometimes we need those feel-good stories. So if you have a business and every year, you have a breast cancer awareness 5K marathon in order to give back to the community, that's a great way to get the media's eyes on you, but to also promote your business. So we're talking about the 5K, but of course we're going to say who the sponsor of the 5K is. Of course we're going to talk about your business, but it's a feel-good story that the journalist is looking for. So consider that if you're not getting the kind of press that you think that you should have and that we all want you to have. Get behind a cause. Consider this. This is number 6. We always talk about any press is good press, bad press is good press, you just want press. And this is true. There are parts of our stories sometimes that are not as gleaming as we would like them to be. And I'll give you an example in just a second. But you have got to realize that when somebody reports on your story, they are not always going to report the story that you want them or you think that they should report. So you don't have 100%, I wouldn't even say you have 50% control over what the final story is going to be. So I had a client, and he's doing some phenomenal things now, extremely successful entrepreneur. But in the beginning of his, when he was younger, he was successful in other ways, and they weren't quite legal. And he was, it's a public fact. And so you really have to get in control of that. And so the way that we talked about that story, and it's absolutely true, and it's absolutely authentic, is that he started out here, but now he's here because he made a change in his life, and because he did it, you can too. So it includes the not so glamorous in an authentic way that speaks to the person that he is now, and it also speaks to the change that everybody can make and the outcome that they can experience because of that change. So you have to think about how you can incorporate some of the not so glamorous things in an authentic way that will help you sell the story. It's really important, because if that fact was found out, if we hadn't been upfront about that and the journalist had found it, it could have really gone badly. And it could have looked as if we were trying to hide or cover up. And that's never good, because once the public or a journalist does not trust you, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well at all. And so you want to make sure that you're being authentic. And then my final tip is to try again, because you may not get the press that you want the first time around. And so if you don't go sit in the corner, because you got to know when you're in your feelings and you don't want, you have to go back and you have to try again. If your first pitch didn't work, then come back with a different pitch. But you have got to keep trying, because it is not always about you or your business or your book. It could be about workload. It could be about the pitch load that you're getting. It could be about timeliness, because there's something else that's so big going on that there's just no bandwidth to talk about what it is that you have going on. So you have to keep trying. And like I said, it is so much easier to become famous at home. So start there first, start in your hometown and then start to branch off, and just make sure that you build up as much good media as you can, so that, people they'll call me. I'm like, oh yeah, I talked to Ebony the other day. She's having her bear brunch. It's a phenomenal thing. She's having all these women. You definitely want to make sure that you share her story. But you have to be out there in order to get those kind of testimonials. So you have to start, and you have to be persistent, and you have to be smart. So I'm hoping that these tips help you, because as entrepreneurs, it's so important that we get eyes on our business in order for our businesses to sustain themselves and to sustain our families. So real quick, the 7 tips. 1, you want to make sure that you're rubbing the back of the journalist. So you want to be engaged. You want to make sure that you're commenting, you're retweeting, you're sharing, you're liking, so that they start to kind of get an idea of who you are and that you are invested in them, so that they can invest in you. 2, you want to take it offline, and you want to make sure that you're going to these events and you're shaking your hands and you're putting business cards in the hands and you're following up and you're doing all of those things to build relationships. Number 3 is you want to make sure you have your stories together, so that when you're telling about your business, you have these relatable situations that people can connect with, and so then they can connect with you in your business. But you also want to have the data to support that. So that's tip number 4. Make sure that while you have your story, you have the data that comes as well. Number 5, get behind a cause. If you're not getting any traction in your media, go for the feel good, go for the charity. It's a win-win. Not only are you getting media, but you're also doing something really good to help the community. Number 6, make sure that you're authentic, because bad press can be good press, but if you're not authentic about it, it could go badly for you. And number 7, don't give up. Don't give up. Make sure that if you don't get the kind of response that you are expecting the first time around, that you try again. All right. So that's 7 ways to connect with journalists and amp up your PR. I have 2 more days left for this giveaway for the press release and the press release guide. So if you haven't gotten it, you need to get it in the next 2 days or it's going away. The website is blessmenikki.com. blessmenikki.com. I'll be talking about how to leverage press next. And so we'll have some other free tools for that. So make sure you get the press release guide and the press release template before it goes away. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you guys for sharing and hearting and liking and commenting. I really appreciate your engagement and I wish you the best.